Frater.
¿Qué pasó, Frater? ¿Cómo estás?
Vamos. Bien, bien, bien.
Welcome, brother. How are you? Say hello to YouTube.
Hola, YouTube. Hola a todos. ¿Cómo están? Saludos desde California.
Welcome to Going Deeper, everyone. Everyone. Bienvenidos, bienvenidas. Este va a ser un mini Going Deeper.
Sí.
Tengo que hacer una llamada importante después de esta presentación y después me tengo que conectar por medio de Facebook a rezar el rosario y bueno, y otros pendientes. Pero bueno, to the point, vámonos, al grano. ¿De qué nos vas a hablar hoy, Leo?
Antes todo, Mina va
Lucas.
para los colombianos. Esta Mina también.
Ups.
Lucas va a mostrar para todos los colombianos lo que está comiendo. Máteme, Mina.
Arepa.
Es una arepa.
Ándale.
Para los colombianos. La hizo mi papá.
Qué golosos.
Ajá. Okay, vamos. Let's get started, folks. We only have a little under half hour and Waco has to leave. And so we shall, they're saying hi, Lucas.
Nada de gula, nada de gula.
No gula.
Moderados, por favor, moderados.
So we're going to start right away. We're going to talk
Okay.
tonight. Last night we talked about the concupiscible appetite, right? The pleasures relative to the flesh. Those about marriage and eating and rest. And we had all the questions that I got on the direct message were obviously about the marriage one.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have more questions, let me know and just send them to me, and I'll try to go deeper with it. But so far, I think we're in a good place. Now we're going to shift from the concupiscible appetite, which has to do with temperance and the desires of the flesh. We're going to move towards the irascible appetite, which has to do with the arduous good. And there's two main virtues that we're going to talk about: courage and meekness, which are opposed to two main vices, two very common vices: fear and anger. And fear and anger, we know, are actually just emotions. Why do we call them vices? Because of our disinclination. So this is one that is hopefully going to be eye-opening for people, because it's really impactful. At least it was for me, and I know for Eduardo and others when we first learned this stuff, right? So here we go. The first question is this: we think fear and anger are a natural, normal part of our psychology, of our emotions, and we're right. But when we go deeper into the definitions of them and we see their effects, the reality is this: we don't need them as often as we think. So here we go. Anger is defined as a perceived injury with a desire for vindication. So you are hurt, and thus you want to hurt. You want to lash out. And that lashing out is generally to stop the hurt or to try to equalize the hurt. There's some sense of, you scribbled on my paper, I need to scribble on your paper so that there's equality and things are proper. And that's what anger does. It starts with a perceived injury. Somehow I've been hurt, I've been slighted, I've been offended. And so now I'm going to go out. Now, because of that, it's a very complex emotion, and we've talked about this before. The perceived injury is what we call, is on the evil side of things, on the negative side of things. Not morally evil, just, physically natural evil, right? So the perceived injury is something is wrong. And then the desire for vindication is, so something is wrong makes me want to contract, to move away from a thing. But the desire for the vindication makes me want to move towards the thing. So it's a conflicting emotion because it has two perspectives. It has the shrinking away, the contraction, and then it has the going towards, the attraction. So it has both the positive and the negative. We talked about this in the old Greek play masks that they would have in the theaters. Anger is the one that has a happy face on one side and a smiling face on the other, because it's that complex emotion. So because it's that way, it really forces a perspective. Recall what emotions do to our image and our mind. They put a perspective on it. They make a thing either look greater than it is or lesser than it is. If I'm hungry, the pizza looks great. If I'm not hungry, it looks terrible if I'm stuffed. It's just that perspective. And so if the emotion of its own has conflicting perspectives, it's going to be very, very difficult to hit that sweet spot of the virtue, that mean right in the middle. And so here's the way all of these emotions need to work. When is the emotion proper and moderated? When is it reside in virtue? When it is reasonable and necessary to perform the action. So if it's part of what is required in order to perform the action, then it is a proper emotion. So when is anger then proper? Well, when we need it to achieve the good. Now, examine ourselves. How often is that? How often is anger the very thing? Now, you know what? I need some anger today in order for me to achieve the good. Does it exist? Yes. Does it happen in our daily lives on a regular basis? The answer very likely is no. My wife, my kids acted up, so I get angry. Well, is that anger what is necessary to achieve the good? Generally speaking, the answer is no. Because in order to achieve the actual good, the will, being a blind faculty, has to have a clear perception of the truth. And if it doesn't have that clear perspective, then you're not going to be achieving the good. So when is anger necessary? When there's no time for abstraction and conceptualization. So if bullets are flying and I need to rake up so that I can face this thing and attack, if someone storms into my house and he's much bigger than I am and I'm very, not as strong as he is, and I perceive the injury that's going to happen, and I think I can overcome it, so I seek some vindication, then that anger is a good thing, because it's going to engage the arduous, it's going to help me strive beyond without even the necessity of thinking the thing through in order to achieve the good. Now I ask again, how often is that in our daily life? The answer is not very often. I'll give one quick example. It was a buddy of mine. He had a very, very expensive alarm system, video cameras all throughout his house. And there was it wasn't functioning. And a friend of ours came in with a $200 Ring app on his phone. He's like, look, I can see my house. I can see the people at the front door. Oh, someone's saying they can't hear me clearly. Patrick, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, many people wrote that. So I don't know if it's your phone or can you please give us a...
Yeah.
Can you hear now?
Can hear me? Yeah, Katya says she can hear as well. If I can get a couple more. Okay. So I'm back to clear. They said there's an echo. Oh, fact that it might be your your microphone.
Okay, let me see. Okay, maybe it's better now. I think it's better now. Let's see.
Test. Test. Yes, much better. Okay, so here we go. So it was a very expensive alarm system, and it just wasn't working. And to add insult to injury, a $200 Ring system was working perfectly fine for a friend of ours. And so this guy got very upset, called the company, said, I started yelling at him, saying, whatever, you got paid thousands of dollars, this thing doesn't work. And he's just getting all riled up. And then the person on the other side tried to respond. And then it's very funny. He said, I don't want to know how the sausage is made. Just make the sausage. And he hung up the phone, right? And so it was obviously, anger was the dominant emotion there. And I was sitting there next to him, and he hung up the phone. He looked over at me, and I happened to be somewhat of a conscience for my friend there. And he's like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have got upset like that, right? I said, well, let's talk it through. Did you achieve the good? Do you think now that those people are going to be really motivated to come help you, to come fix the system, to come, bend over backwards to get the thing done, right? Probably not. To his great credit, he called. Oh, no, by the way, so he said, so what, do I just let them, have it not work and have it not? And I said, wow, now we're talking my language. You're trying to achieve a good. And the good is the good of justice to get what you paid for, which is a perfection. It's a good thing, right? So does that mean we roll over? No. It just means that anger isn't the thing that's going to help us. So I said, what you can say is, hey, listen, I'm paying you X amount of dollars per month. You either get this thing fixed or I'm not going to pay you that amount of money per month. Or by the way, if it goes even further and I'm going to have to try to take other recourses to get the thing done. And he called back and the first thing he did was he apologized. And then the other guy on the other end was like very gracious and they got the thing done, right? Anger is this grenade that explodes and explodes interiorly first with us. St. Augustine said this. He said, anger is the poison pill that we swallow to try to hurt another person. It moves us interiorly, distorts our images, and then has these ripple effects on other people, right? Let's say our buddy, yelled at this guy at work and this guy got angry as well. And then he went home and had a bad day and, lashed out at his kids or whatever else. Because of the vehemence of it, it has this rippling effect. And so it has this tendency to blind us. Can it be ordered? Yes. Is there a time for just anger? Yes. When we need to scatter, when I need to lift that car because it's on something that I'm going to push the person out of the way, whatever it is that requires that jolt, that burst, that arduous strike. That's when anger comes into play. How often is that? Again, it is very rare. If we examine ourselves, we'll find out that 99% of the time, I'd venture to say, our anger is not justified. It blinds us from the good as opposed to helping us to achieve the good, which is what the emotions are supposed to do by their design. Good. So that's anger. How do we overcome it? There's actually a two-step process. Step number one is this. When we realize that we are being angry, recall emotions work because of the image in our imagination and the perspective on it. So what you have to do, if we're angry, we have to separate ourselves from the image. We have to remove the image. If the thing is getting us angry, we have to stop thinking about the thing. Normally that means stepping aside. If I'm getting angry at my wife, I'm getting angry at my kids, I get angry at you guys, right guys? I don't? Okay. So yes, you remove yourself from the image. You remove yourself from the thing that is making you angry. And we have to habituate ourselves to do this. Remember, virtue is that creating the habit in our faculties. So the first thing is separate ourselves. Remove the image. It's that process where the person has to become sensitive to the object so that they realize, okay, I'm getting angry and this is the cause of my anger, so I need to separate myself from this. It calms down all that back brain stuff we were talking about, that stress, that fight response that we have, and it helps us to then calm down. That's step one. We have to consistently get into the habit of separating ourselves. Why? Because that is only step one, and we have to master that before we can get to step two. Step two is this. You have to reformulate the image. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, once we're habituating to separate ourselves from it, we can start thinking of the thing clearly. Once we can think of the thing clearly, control over the image so that we can see it properly. In other words, anger pushes us to see the evil, to see the bad, to see the sorrow, the injury. We fail to see the good. And where is the good? Everywhere. We've talked about this. No matter what happens, there's either a good there or there's a good to be achieved. So say it's my wife that is causing me to get angry. What happens? What's the difference between the day of our honeymoon when the image is so amazing and beautiful and it walks on clouds and it can do no wrong? So now this is the battle axe that comes in and just the sight of her, gets me upset. It's the same image. What's happened is my disposition. I need to reformulate that image. Instead of focusing on the hurt, on the bad, I need to try to focus on the good. Now, isn't that unjust? Does that just mean that you're rolling over? Then meekness just means being weak? No, it's the opposite. Once you see the thing as proper perspective, then you can achieve the good clearly. Once I'm not seeing my wife as a thorn in my side, but as the love of my life and mother of my children, I'm using her as an example because she's good for it because she's a saintly woman, right? Never upsets me. But
she's next to you right now. That's
and because she's standing right there with an axe. once I can see the totality of it, then I'm able to relate to the image properly. Anger focuses in that image and just narrows our focus to the negative and doesn't allow us to see the proper perspective. So we have to step away from ourselves so we're not seeing that thing, and then we have to open up our perspective so that we can see it properly and broadly. That's the process for anger. That's how we're going to grow in the virtue of meekness, which is opposed to anger. Now, the people that are most susceptible to anger are actually the people that are most susceptible to love. Why? Because it's that sensitivity to the object, that perceived injury. The more I love my daughter, the more angry I'm going to get if someone hurts them. So the people that are generally angry in our lives, and we all know them, those are people who have the capacity for great love. I think it was Mavis maybe last time who made that connection between our faculties and our dispositions and the virtues and the opposing vices. If we are strong in anger, that means we're also capable to be strong in love. We just have to reformulate that image in order for us to relate to the object properly. And there's two parts to it.
I'm losing you, brother. We're losing you. We're losing you.
Injury. So we either have to grow. Are we losing me? Am I back?
Yes.
Am I back? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, someone just said it. Angry people are often very hurt. Yes, and they're very hurt because they're sensitive. When you see someone who's angry and trying to be that just means they're a sensitive soul. Right? It's the opposite of what they're displaying. There might be one of two things: an unwillingness to suffer. So one way to grow in meekness is by general mortifications. Things like fasting actually help with our anger. Things like just acclimating to things that are suffering, because guess what? Life sometimes hurts, and we can't fight the suffering. Sometimes we have to accept it in order to appropriate it and put it in its proper perspective. So we either have to acclimate to suffering and then try to reformulate that image or step away from the image because we're used to the fact that this is suffering, so I don't want to, I'm okay with the suffering, so I'm going to separate myself from it so that I'm not trying to get rid of it by attacking it, or focus on the desire for vindication. Remember, it's a perceived injury, which is suffering, or the desire for vindication. And how do we focus on that part of it? We got to find out which one we are more prone to. Are we ones that we're unwilling to suffer? If we can suffer generally and it's not a problem, we have plenty of patience, and we can take we can draw blood and it's not a problem. That's one type of person. The other type of person is the one who, I'm not willing to suffer, and so I need to work on that. But if I am willing to suffer, and I'm still angry, then it must mean I have to moderate my self-love. In other words, it's rooted probably in pride. This is known as indignation. I'm upset because you upset me. How dare you do that to me? I do not deserve this, right? And that's where the anger comes from. And true gratitude is a virtue that focuses on the good that we received and realizes that we are not doing anything in this life. And in fact, even worse, we tend by our actions to deserve negative things that we create of our own. And so when there is good to be perceived, we have this attitude of delighting and resting in it that is so opposed to anger. Gratitude kills anger. Some signs that we are angry. If we do not want to speak about a subject, it's called being taciturn or a contraction, right? Some people, something happens to them and they don't want to talk about it. That's a sign that it's probably anger. If we start getting loud when we're talking, hey, you know what? Cut it out, right? It might be a sign that we're angry. If we start what's called rumination, we have something in our mind and we keep thinking about it and thinking about it and not seeing it from multiple perspectives, but from one perspective that's a negative perspective. We have that focus on the injury. Rumination is a sign that there's creeping anger, right? There's a bunch of other ones. We won't get to them tonight, but the idea is this. Examine anger in our life, grow in it. The 2 steps are remove the image, step away from the image, start thinking about something else. If it's not immediately in front of you and you're just thinking about it and you have this rumination, start thinking about something else.
Gratitude.
And then reformulate the image. I have to think about this thing properly. I'm not thinking about it properly. So let me think the positive here, the good that is to be achieved. And there's 2 types of people. The ones that can do this very easily are ones that either do not have a horror of suffering, so you're acclimated to suffering, which we'll talk about at length, or we are humble and we're able to live in accordance with the truth. We see the true, which is good, and we see the good through it, so we are grateful. That's anger. If you have questions, send me some. I'm going to do 5 minutes now on fear. Why? Because fear is a lot like anger, but a lot less complicated. Now, and because of that, fear is often actually much more necessary, much more prevalent than anger. But the reality is, just like anger, it is immoderated. And just like these arduous emotions, it's very vehement. And so generally speaking, we are more afraid of things than we need to be. Generally, it's a fear of suffering. That's what ultimately it comes down to, right? And so acclimating to suffering is something we're going to talk about at length. It doesn't mean we're sadists, right? Or we're sadomasochists. It means we acclimate by seeing the good in the suffering, by knowing that a lot of the suffering that comes our way is medicinal, and that the focus on the negative doesn't help us to achieve the good anyways, right?
Mortifícate.
Fear. Exactly.
Offer up.
Fear. I'm sorry, what was that?
Offer it up.
Offer it up. Yeah, both of those things we'll talk about at length. So fear is defined as this. It's a perception of a future evil that cannot be overcome. Right, so this thing is evil. I don't mean morally evil, right? I mean physically evil or naturally evil, like this is going to hurt me, it's going to do violence to me, or something that I really, really don't like. I see it as a bad, but I can't overcome it. So I have fear. Sometimes not being able to overcome it is only because our mind can't grasp it, right? So there's two doors in front of me. One of them has a tiger that wants to maul me, so I'm afraid to open that door. The other one we say has, let's presume we believe has a ghost in it, right? Both of those, there's a fear, and one because of the future evil, but the maybe getting torn apart by the lion or the tiger. But on the ghost side of things, what's the evil there? What's the perception that can't be overcome? Generally, it's the uncertainty. I don't know what this thing is. I don't know what it can do, what it can't do. And that uncertainty obscures our ability to be able to see that this is an evil that can be overcome. This is why, generally speaking, when we face our fears, we say we faced our fears when we have actually overcome them. So someone's afraid of heights and they're going to go bungee jumping or skydiving. How do they overcome their fear? By getting up in the plane, and then what? Coming back down? No. Well, coming back down by staying in the plane? No. By jumping out of the thing. They overcome it because the fear puts the perspective on the image that tells us this evil cannot be overcome. In other words, something's bad is going to happen that I don't want. And so I don't want to achieve this end, this perceived good, because the evil that is possible overcomes it. And that tells me that I can't overcome that evil in order to get to the good. Now, when is fear proper? Again, when it is necessary to achieve the good. And there's a time, obviously, because it's one of the human's emotions and that it's good, that we need fear. There's a healthy fear. By the way, we should have a healthy fear of not fulfilling our purpose, right? We should have a healthy, am I overcoming the evil in myself? That's a healthy fear. Why? Because it can motivate us to engage that arduous. Or it can motivate us to tread lightly. Hey, let's be sure that I have caution or circumspection or foresight so that I'm not going into things that I know are going to be an evil that I can't overcome because of my own weakness, right?
Like drugs?
But yes,
you should be afraid of drugs.
That's exactly right. Of drunkenness, of drugs, of things that we see on the internet that young kids and adults who are living chaste lives shouldn't be seeing. Sin itself, we should have a healthy fear of that. If there's an intruder in the back of our house and they broke through a window, should we have a healthy fear? Yes, but moderated. Is this a fear that is an evil that I can overcome or not overcome? Here's the problem. Fear has all these effects, and most of them do not result in achieving the good. Contraction, right? If something's coming, we have a tendency to back away from it, right? We have this notion of you're doing this, you're like afraid, right? And that's just because if we're wounded, we want to step away from the thing. We fear this evil, this knife is coming at us. We don't want to come through it, right? But in order to combat that contraction, what we need is extraction. We need to go towards the thing. And I don't mean towards the knife, obviously. I mean, I'm talking about fears generally. Most of our fears, just like with anger, are not rooted in anything other than our own dispositions, right? I'm afraid to do this thing which I know to be good. I have this fear of suffering this thing, or I'm afraid of saying this thing or not saying this thing, and I think it's perfectly prudent, but I don't want to appear silly. I'm afraid of what people might think of me. I'm afraid of what my perception might be, right? Those sorts of fears, right? Or fear that we're going to get hurt by people that could really make us contract towards people themselves. I don't want to be around that person because I'm afraid they're going to hurt me. I'm not angry about it, but I do have this contraction and this fear, which just means I'm not seeing things totally clearly. Now, is there an element, as Heather just pointed out, of self-preservation? Absolutely. Is it reasonable? Yes. But when? When reason perceives the image properly. Here's a problem. Fear has a tendency to put a perspective on the image so that we don't see the thing properly. So we don't actually have hope and trust because our perception is of the evil. And so then, what should we do with fear? Turns out, the exact same thing as anger. When we're afraid of something, let's not ruminate on the thing. Let's step away from the image. Let's remove the image from us so that we're not just focusing on the future evil. The future evil part is the part that we have to remove. Why? So we can reformulate it so that we can see the good. Right? So I've decided what am I going to do? I have stage fright, right? But I also have this gift that I've harnessed by studiosity, where I'm able to formulate some of these concepts in a clear way and communicate them to people, right? So I know that my stage fright, talking in front of hundreds of people, and in this case, thousands of people with all the other social media that a lot of those on, I know it's a good to be achieved, but my stage fright gets so that I'm contracting and I don't want to do this thing, right? I have to look past the evil and reformulate it towards the good and say, okay, even though I'm going to be afraid, even though it's going to require some suffering on my part to overcome this thing, I'm not going to give into the contraction. I'm going to go towards the extraction. I'm going to go towards the thing. Why? Because that going towards, the emotion that goes towards are the positive emotions, the desires, the hopes, the delights. I'm going to focus on the good to be achieved. The good of hopefully people. I got a great note from someone yesterday. Something I said, they related to one of their coworkers who was actually struggling with something, and it helped lift this cloud from them. And that was such a beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing that. Right? Those are the sorts of goods that we need to focus on if we know that we want to overcome a fear because there's a perceived good to be achieved. Right? So the long and the short is this. The irascible appetite, the one that engages the arduous, is it's a double-edged sword. It's vehement, and it needs to be. Sometimes we need to contract and extract quickly. There's bullets flying. I need to duck down quickly, right? I need to have that healthy fear of me getting hurt and not being able to overcome, bullets flying at me and getting killed. By the way, the opposite extreme of that, if I'm not even thinking about that, is not a virtue. Courage doesn't mean I'm going to go run at the bullets. That's a vice as well. That's called foolhardiness. Courage is right in the median. Problem is we have a tendency to be afraid of too many things, right? And so because of the vehemence of that emotion, it has a tendency to go towards the excess. So what do we need to do? Land in the middle by going towards the defect. I'm not going to focus on the evil. I'm going to focus on the good. First, by removing the evil, stepping away from it, and then reformulating it towards the good. With anger, the exact same thing. Anger is much more prevalent because of its conflicting emotion. There's so many things that we want and then don't want. There's so many things that we perceive as injuries and then want vindication for, naturally speaking, because we believe in justice. But because of the vehemence, anger has a tendency to blind us. So when we get angry, do not act. Do not act on the anger as a general rule. Step one, remove ourselves so we can think clearly. Step two, reformulate the image so that we can see the good. Mm-hmm. And then we can talk about it and act. Generally speaking, it's going to require us saying we're sorry, because one of the sad daughters of anger is rancor. That's when we can't control our voice. We just lash out and say things that we don't want to say, right? It's opposed to so many virtues. And
if you don't repent, you resent.
Exactly right, Father. If you don't repent, you resent. And the process, at this point, we should be able to map out. Repentance means I am sorry for what I did. If I am not sorry for what I did, then that must mean that I'm not the one that's wrong. You're the one that's wrong. And if you're the one that's wrong, guess what? That's a perceived injury on your part. And if I'm a sensitive soul, I'm going to want to vindicate that injury. So that must mean that I'm going to resent you and I'm going to be angry at you. And if it's not me, it must be you. And if it's not you or me, guess who it is? God. One of the final things that fear and both anger lead us towards is a hatred of God himself.
Yeah. Blaming. Every, you know?
It happened from the beginning, right? Adam blamed Eve.
It's all your fault, Leo. It's all your fault.
Adam blamed Eve, and Eve blamed the serpent. That's the way it works. It's part of us. But the good news is meekness is an incredibly, and courage requires a circumstance in order to kind of live in it, right? But meekness is one, that moderation of anger, that we have a tendency to be able to practice every single day until we habituate it. And once we get it, they say those who have perfected it, it's such a liberating virtue. It really helps you see things clearly. These things aren't affecting me, and I'm able to relate to people at a much calmer and a much clearer level, with much more love and charity.
Awesome, man.
All right, then.
Beautiful. So 31 minutes. So it was mini going deeper version, but this is better than nothing. And actually what we heard today was amazing. It was awesome, Frater. Thank you so much, like always. And I'm glad to see all the comments and people are really using this knowledge and this wisdom for their own daily life. And it's very positive and it's amazing and it's life-changing presentation. So thank you for that. I thank God for you. And I thank everyone who is connected with us today. Thank you to everyone. And what do you want to do? You wanna take the weekend with your family, Saturday and Sunday?
It's tomorrow, Saturday?
Yeah. You want to do Saturday and then Sunday off?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do Saturday then.
I'm gonna have to do Sunday and Monday off because Monday I'm actually traveling back to New York.
Okay, so let's do Saturday and then we'll meet again on Tuesday. Beautiful.
Right, so tomorrow we'll talk about stuff relative to the intellect.
Yeah, and tomorrow we'll have plenty of time, so we'll have the whole hour. Okay, guys. So thank you so much, Leo.
I like you guys quickly. Just quick thumbs up if you guys like 30-minute versions better. But I think a shorter amount of time generally works better.
Well,
so maybe you guys can send me some messages.
Beautiful. Okay. Bye, Father. Buenas noches, Father. Dios te bendiga.
Bye, everybody.
Ciao, everyone. Thank you so much.
Ciao, ciao. Bye, Claudia. Bye, Coco. Bye, Katia.
Lucas, Rina, adiós.
Ciao. Vamos. Bye.
Él fue Leo Severino. Leo Severino es un productor de cine, es guionista, es filósofo, teólogo de origen colombiano. Tengo 16 años de conocerlo y hemos trabajado juntos en la película de Vela, en la película de Little Boy y ahora en la película de Sound of Freedom, que próximamente se va a estrenar. Todavía no sabemos dónde, porque obviamente por el COVID-19, el coronavirus vino a cambiar muchas cosas, pero estamos buscando una fórmula increíble que ser todavía mejor que lo que teníamos planeado antes. Así es que fuerza y ánimo, Dios los bendiga. Voy a conectarme para rezar el rosario. Pues una llamada rápido de 5 minutos, importante, que tengo que hacer, familiar, y nos conectamos por medio de Facebook. Ahí los espero, amigos de YouTube, amigos de Instagram, los espero en 5 minutos en el Rosario por la Vida en Facebook, para que nos conectemos, unidos en oración. Esto es un movimiento de amor, un movimiento de oración, por un mundo mejor. Dios los bendiga. Nos vemos en 5 minutos. ¿Sale, familia? Bueno, no me fallen. Paz y bien. Paz y amor. Nos vemos en 5 minutos en Facebook. No me fallen, ahí los espero. A rezar antes de dormir.